The first, I love the term, we were blogging and chatting and schrijven our way across Holland. But that's one of the Dutch blogs had. Number one observation I think we had to make, and it's really obvious to me and maybe some of the others, especially those who've been in Holland, is efficiency. The Dutch greenhouse producers and others have been all about efficiency for as long as I've been coming here. That's about 15 years, not very long. But I think everybody almost takes it for granted that Dutch growers are really striving to be more efficient of energy, of labor, and of space. And we really know it's all because those three things are either very expensive or very rare here in the Netherlands. So point number two, which was innovation. And this really ties back the Dutch, for as long as they've been in the greenhouse industry, they have been innovative. They are not afraid of innovation. We saw some really amazing, jaw-dropping technology this week. And, things like the combined heating and power, LEDs, closed greenhouses, biological control, robots. There seems to be no fear. In fact, they seem to embrace this. North America, there's a bit more hesitancy.
We have growers who are extremely innovative, but they're building things in their own machine shop for their own production, and they're not sharing it. It's not that they're not sharing it on purpose. It's just, hey, we've got to get this job done. We've got to get it done faster. So we have our machinists build us something where they could share that with the rest of the industry, or a manufacturer could take that and build it and sell it to the rest of the industry. But we do have extremely innovative growers. It's just in little microcosms.
Yeah, we kind of don't have this closed industry, which leads to point number three. Thank you very much, Kelly. Cooperation. I think this week we saw everywhere we went a lot of cooperation. And you do have an advantage here in the Netherlands because the industry is so close, so consolidated. There's really so much unity among all players.
In the United States, we certainly don't have the infrastructure that you have here in Holland. Being close is one thing, but having the capability to turn an idea into a reality almost overnight, begin testing it, and then learn about it, and then further developing it, either at the growers or at the research institute. When I need components to build something for a greenhouse, I have to go a long way. You can call the phone and you'll have the parts very quickly. So that infrastructure, I think, is key.
And you don't have to explain what you're trying to do or why you're trying to do it, because everybody in the country, whether they're involved in horticulture or not, seems to know about it. It's so prevalent here, especially in the important areas of government and finance, which is where we can run big roadblocks. We may have a great idea that's going to make us more sustainable, but we spend all of our time explaining it. We talked about CHP, and one of the guys told us in California they want $150,000 just to do a study, and they may still say no, but they want the money up front anyway to study whether or not they're going to let you have a CHP plant. So those kinds of things. And then really connecting to that is the broader strategic alliances that seem to be materializing now. The sustainability deltas, we heard that term, the green ports, the idea of using a greenhouse to produce energy and heat to serve a community. Those kinds of things we've seen a little bit of in the States, at least building a greenhouse next to a power plant or a landfill for the methane. Those opportunities have risen, but not to the extent they have here, and I don't think there's the drive there to take advantage of those kinds of things. So I think that's decentralization. And this kind of came up, I think, at Flora Holland when we were there. The idea that the auction is going virtual, so that the hobby and the habit, the club of going to the clock at 6 a.m., having a coffee and a smoke with your colleagues, and buying flowers, which has gone on for generations. And it's the same in Canada. The auction's there. There'll still be a couple of plots, but that's going away. It's going to be all off your laptop in your office anywhere on the planet, because that's really more efficient. It did bring up a real point of discussion, though, maybe argument, and that is the whole concept of local versus global, and food miles, flower miles. This is something that the whole world is arguing about, whether it's better to have a tomato produced in the Netherlands, eaten in the Netherlands, or produced in the UK, eaten in the UK, or if it's okay to ship from a very efficient production company into a less efficient country. You know, how are consumers going to accept it? The retailers going to accept it? What is, you know, where does the truth lie? You know, carbon footprint, all of those kinds of things. We're all going to struggle with that. Another thing that came up was communication. It became clear that, first off, a lot of the industry, especially I think the manufacturers, Wageningen, are doing a really good job of communicating the kinds of things they're learning and finding with growers. We heard less emphasis about educating the end consumer, who really holds our future in her hand, as we like to put it. And that's especially important when we're talking about a topic like sustainability. We had a bit of a discussion, maybe you could say an argument, when we were at the seed breeder yesterday about GMOs versus biotechnology. We were looking at slides of all this genetic material and DNA and genes, and I made the comment that, you know, don't show that to a consumer, because they're going to think Frankenstein tomato. They don't know the difference between genetic modification and biotechnology. Our story has to be something that the consumer can understand, not just the story we want to tell.
So the communications budget in these projects needs to be more than a rounding error, what it typically is, or if it exists at all. So the missing link there, again, is so how do you sell sustainability? Well, you have to figure out how to message it, but nobody ever does it. We just sit around and go, well, that's not possible. We're gonna capture value in some other way. But in fact, I think we can sell it, right? And otherwise, your whole industry is a mystery. People don't value this. They don't know it. They don't share your achievements. And as a consequence, all you do is you're in this endless cycle of commoditization, right? So in my mind, you have to sell a tomato in the market to the grocery store, right? And then, you know, let them be the price taker at the end of the day. So that's about you communicating directly with the people who actually eat and use your product, which we don't do it either. But I think that's the kind of communication or the kind of relationship that needs to evolve as agriculture matures through another cycle.
And that's one of the things about this week, that the perception that sometimes the Dutch consumer doesn't appreciate the Dutch agriculture, the greenhouse agriculture. That was kind of surprising to me, and I was kind of interested if there are marketers that try to tell their story to consumers, or is that a message like in the U.S. we have know your farmer, know your food? Is that type of message being attempted here in Europe or in the Netherlands? I didn't know about that.
Well, the impressive part is when you have a group of people traveling around that know horticulture, that have experienced themselves one way or another in horticulture, and can be amazed and impressed like we were this week. And by the way, thank you to everybody for showing us your places. How can we, and that includes myself, a producer also, get that message across about all the efforts that we're taking collectively in getting this product out there? Because that basically comes down to that sustainability issue again of how can we get the extra money for our product so that we can keep going also.
And of course, we're all from North America. Some of us sound funny, but it's our token Dutch guy we have on. But we got a token Canadian too. But there are big differences between the Netherlands and North America. And the first one that impacts how we in North America can do sustainability or can adopt your technologies is monoculture versus multiculture culture. I'm sure many of you, most of you have been to U.S. greenhouses. You know that as opposed to having 4 million 12-centimeter orchids, like we saw at Terra, thank you. You know, we have 200 or 300 varieties in about 50 different sizes that don't go out evenly 52 weeks a week. 52 weeks a year. I figured the Terralog's doing 77,000 a week, every week. And we do it Easter, Mother's Day, and then nothing, and then, Christmas. And so it impacts our ability to use a lot of these technologies. Biological controls is a key example. There are, thankfully, some bedding plant growers who, despite the diversity of their crops, are really trying to find a way to use biocontrols along with traditional products. But it's much more challenging. Same with greenhouse automation. So we're a little bit behind the 8 ball, so to speak, there when it comes to achieving some of the kinds of efficiencies that you have. But another one is food versus flowers. And we were in both food greenhouses, tomatoes, peppers this week, and floriculture greenhouses. And sometimes it was hard to tell how much difference there was in the way the tomato producer thinks or operates versus the way an orchid producer operates. I know there's a big difference in the U.S. because we have very few, relatively speaking, food-producing greenhouses. I don't know if you know how many acres there are in North America, or Gene, you're involved in Arizona.
Well, in the tomato industry, it's about 2,000 acres of large, no, not close, just greenhouse operators of large scale. Then there's a lot of the seasonal, I'm talking year-round.
So 2,000 acres for a country
For tomato.
That's a lot of acres.
800 hectares.
800, and that's it. So
There's only about 10,000 acres of all greenhouses in the U.S., right?
And then the very last one that really came up yesterday and today, and it was discussed earlier by Mr. Penning, and that is the idea of reducing costs versus increasing value. And most of the week was spent on efficiency, driving the cost as low as possible. And we talked very little about bringing the value of the product up.
Check for today, with Robert Chris.
Except for today. And Coppercrest, I think, was a superb example to kind of end on. Here's a guy who can get 1,000 euros per square meter from seed.
And he doesn't care what it costs.
From seed, and who knows what the end user, the chef, what he's finally charging for 3 sprouts on a plate. I mean, you talk about adding value through the chain, and I think that was a great example. And in the U.S., what I know is that we're pretty good at marketing. You guys are really good at production, and we're pretty good at marketing, and those are the places where we're swapping information. But sustainability shouldn't be just about how cheaply can we do it or how efficiently we can do it, but how good can we make our product at the same time. Increase our prices there, and then we have more money to invest in those labor-saving things. Because the last thing, and I was glad to hear from a few bankers here today, but everywhere we went, when we go through a $40 million orchid greenhouse, we're all asking, how do you pay for it? How do you finance it? And none of us, well, one of us is a financier. Maybe Angelique can explain it to us, but that was one of the questions as well. But anything else?
I think when you look at the price and the value, getting the message out, that basically all comes together. I think they're very good in what we've seen this week in getting the message out to those intermediate chains that was touched on a little earlier. But the end consumer, I think, sometimes does not get that message. And perhaps there lies our biggest challenge. And that's, again, I'm talking not just here, I'm talking in my own situation as well. It's tough to reach such a large audience.
That is the next frontier for all of us, is the marketing aspect.